And here we go. We're coming live. Welcome, everyone, to Via Veritatis with myself and the wonderful Jennifer. We're really excited about this one. It's a new take on things that both of us have been doing for a little while, and a coming together of minds and thoughts and approaches that we hope is going to catch attention and make an impact in people's lives as they hear about what we're talking about. Via Veritatis, for those of you who don't speak Latin, which I'm assuming is most of you, is Latin for the true way or the way of truth. And this is really what this podcast is all about. This is about the exploration of the true way. And when we talk about that, there's lots of interpretations you could put on it. But I would say that really what we're talking about is a way that leads your life to a truthful place. That's really what we're thinking about here. And so, Jen, I'm happy for you to jump in and correct anything or add to anything that I've said there so far.
No, I think thanks for introducing the show. I'm really excited about doing this because it does take a lot of your work and a lot of my work and kind of mashes it together into something that's relevant to today. Because obviously there's a culture war. There are lots of things. Truth can be defined as so many things by so many people. But I think for me, the problem with society these days, and other people may have another opinion, of course, but for me, the absence of God is what has destroyed society. Whether you believe in God or not, I think even one who doesn't believe in God could not argue that biblical principles, that order that he has established, just works. And when you take that away and truth becomes whatever you decide it should be in the moment, and you can start defining things as anything, then we have some problems. And so the absence of God, I think, in my opinion, is the reason that society is starting to crumble.
I would agree. And I think for me, the thing that I have noticed more than anything is the prevalence of the push and the idea that somehow if you got rid of the idea of God in society, people would naturally do good things. And I think that's been fairly clearly shown to be incorrect. And very clearly shown to be wrong. And I think it was the quote from Voltaire, which I always like, that if God did not exist, it'd be necessary to invent him.
It would.
Yeah, and I think that kind of sums up the problem that we're facing at the moment. Is it began with the push towards secularism. And I noticed that growing up. I was raised in a very secular society. I wasn't raised in a place where there was a particularly strong focus on religion or on worship of any sort. My parents would have described themselves as Christian, but we certainly didn't have a lot of focus on it. We would at school, we said the Lord's Prayer once a day, and I think that was about as far as it really went. And we'd go to church at Easter and at Christmas, and that was it.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of meaning.
Yeah, no, exactly. It didn't hold a lot of real meaning in life whatsoever. And so I grew up kind of without anything that you could call a religious upbringing or an understanding of the reasoning behind God, because whether you believe in God or not, I think the real awakening moment comes when you understand that without it, there is nothing on which to pin morality.
Right. Like what you said a few minutes ago.
Hmm.
If you take away God, there's the thought of like, well, people will just be good people. But like, and I do believe that in general, people are good.
Hmm.
But then what defines what good is? If there's no definition of what good is, which is what God provides to us, good can be anything. Good is relative to whoever is doing something or saying something.
Exactly. And something can be good for you, but not good for other people. And so therefore, is it good?
Yeah.
And that's the problem that you get when there's no baseline morality that everybody in effect agrees to.
Right.
Because that's really the purpose and principle of religion in complete in its real fundamental. Because even if you believe that religion was invented in order to control society, which I don't personally believe, but a lot of people do believe that.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, a lot of people do believe that. And even if that's what you believe, there's a reason underneath that creates the harmony that allows society to flourish and function. Because otherwise, yes, what you end up with is the ultimate decentralization.
Yes.
Nobody is tied to anything. Nobody has any morality outside of their own self. And the self and selfish principles and selfish ideals and acting in self-interest and so on is when you understand a lot of the biblical teachings is ultimately what evil is.
Yes.
Evil is ultimately the focus purely on self and self-gratification and self-aggrandizement and so on. And I think the person I've always heard that's put it the best is Jordan Peterson. I listened to quite a lot of
My
his
favorite.
stuff, and one of the things that he's said is that what the real representation of evil is, and I think this kind of sums up where a lot of these ideas have come from, is it is the intellect minus morality.
Yes.
And that's why a lot of these ideas come from the higher education establishments.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the people in higher education establishments are very intellectual, very smart, and often very well educated people. But what they do is they fall in love with their own intellect, and therefore they separate that from any kind of form of morality, and they create their own morality.
Which is why the education system is so terrible right now.
Exactly. And that's where it goes. It takes you down that line. And I think that for me, that all fits into a very obvious space when you understand that the name of the devil, Lucifer, which was never actually, I think, mentioned in the Bible. I don't think the name Lucifer ever comes out of the Bible. I think it comes out of later points, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question. I don't actually know if that is a fact or not. I don't ever remember seeing the name Lucifer.
No, I don't think so either. But I'm aware that Lucifer is again a Latin name. But it actually means bringer of light,
which is really interesting.
Which is very interesting. It's the connection again to the intellect being unbridled from morality.
Yeah.
And when you understand that, I think that's when it becomes quite apparent that there's a different way to go.
Yeah, like it's I've often wondered, like, Satan, the ultimate reason that he was thrown out of heaven is, of course, that he wanted to become more powerful than God. Like, I wonder what his intentions were, though. Like, did he have good intentions and he just pushed the limits? And then because it also says that he in the past was very dear to God. Like his closest
God's right hand. He was one of the archangels. Yeah.
Like one of the closest person. So it makes you wonder, like, did he get mad? Did he just become selfish? Like, I think that's really, that was the fall of Adam and Eve too, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's interesting because I've looked into this a few times, and the thing that's always struck me about it is that ultimately what it's doing is the story of Lucifer. Now, I don't know if you've ever read Paradise Lost by Milton, which I would really suggest reading because it's an absolute masterpiece of a book. But that's all about the fall of Lucifer from heaven. It's about the attempted, effectively, rebellion of Lucifer in heaven and the battle that took place and him being cast out and so on, and then what happened from there. Yeah. And ultimately it was he was incredibly bright and incredibly smart, and part of it was two things. One is that because he was very smart, he again fell in love with his own intellect and therefore started to divorce it from God. And there's another element as well, which was a jealousy of man. And part of that is because there is something that I was listening to the other day. Somebody put this in a really interesting term I'd never really considered before. But as humans, we get to participate in creation with God.
Okay.
So when we procreate, we are participating in creation with God. We're providing the biology, and He is providing the soul.
Right.
And so we get to participate in that, whereas the angels don't.
That's true.
And there's an element to the story, which is that's where a lot of the fractionalization began.
I never thought about that. That's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, it does make sense that as an angel who has become very narcissistic and selfish, that he would be jealous of people getting to have that special kind of relationship with God.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area to explore. I really do like to think about this stuff quite deeply, because it really does draw me to thinking about where we go as a society and as a civilization if we end up divorcing away from that.
Yeah, we're going to go down.
Yeah.
Down.
Yeah, exactly. And there was there's people already talking about AI being the Antichrist. Is that it is this soulless vessel that will draw everybody in.
Yeah, I can see that. No, I think it can also be used for some good. I've definitely used it for some good things. Like ChatGPT can be like the best personal assistant ever.
It can. It can. Yeah. I use 2 or 3 AIs, and they're very, very useful. I get great usage out of them. I personally think of it more like a tool.
Yeah, same.
For a particular usage. But what happens when it becomes a more powerful entity?
Exactly. And there are probably things that AI is capable of that nobody even has any, can't even imagine. And then you start to think about Revelation and what the mark of the beast might be. Is it something AI related? Is it, I mean, I know that it's something that's going to put limitations on humans, obviously. I always think about things like that. I don't think we're there yet.
No.
I selfishly want that to happen in our lifetime, but
yes, I know what you mean. It's almost the desire to live in a time where a major event in the history of mankind takes place.
Yes. I mean, I think I've been thinking about that since I was a little kid, even though, I've always been a believer of Jesus and God. I've not always been a follower, but I've always thought about those kinds of things. But I would be so happy right now if Jesus would just come grab me. I'm ready.
Yeah,
I would love to see all of that.
I can understand that. And I think there's a lot of theories around it, obviously, and we could go down those rabbit holes for an awful long time. And I think, throughout this series, we probably will. But where I'm immediately thinking is that, as I go back to I think it was Elon Musk who might have said something about it a while ago, that he believes that human beings building AI is like the caterpillar building the chrysalis. It doesn't really know why it's doing it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of programmed in that that's what you do. And then it emerges the other side as a butterfly without knowing that that's what's going to happen to it.
Yeah.
What happens
That's
to the human race
process.
is it part of the process? And then when you analyze history and you analyze some of these things that have been discovered, I mean, I saw something the other day, and I must admit, I haven't looked into how true this is, but there was a discovery where they found in a piece of rock buried at a level that was something like 400 million years old is the level that they found this at. They found a hammer.
Really?
In this level of rock. Now, I haven't verified that story. I don't know how true that is, but having done a quick read of it, it seemed reasonably legitimate that was something that had happened.
Yeah.
How it got there is still a matter of some debate, I think. But I don't think we completely understand our own history, which means it's very difficult to understand where we're going.
Yeah, I don't think we're meant to understand everything. There are so many questions, like even what you just said, 400 million years, but a lot of Christians think that we've only been around for 6,000 years, right? So like, how do you explain that? What is right? Like, what is the true answer? That stuff is really hard to think about and explain.
It is. And I've got a similar feeling on whether or not half of the things that are believed are in fact true. And I think that's the purpose of today is to look at what is the truth. And so, for example, one of the ones that's always brought up as contentious is evolution, because it's kind of been repeated often enough that most people believe now that that's just demonstrably true. Yeah. That evolution took place, and that everything on the world and everything that lives and ever has lived all emerged from the primordial soup somehow, and over hundreds of millions or billions of years has developed into the life that it is today. There are some problems with that narrative. The first being, and it's an interesting analogy. It's like the analogy of a car. So you look at a modern day car,
okay,
and then you look at the first cars that emerged in the sort of 1920s, and that you can back engineer them back to their original point. So you can take a modern day car and you can strip a lot of stuff off of it, and it still functions as a car.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do that with a human cell, you remove one thing, it stops functioning as a human cell completely. And which gives which pushes slightly back against the evolution narrative, because what you should be able to see is that there are things that are built on top of the previous thing.
Sure.
But that doesn't appear to have been how it works. Now, it could work differently to that, but that is certainly a question that I think is difficult to answer.
Yeah, it's hard. I definitely believe in a lot of science. Now, this is probably where some part of our show is going to, maybe it'll bring up some interesting debate of some sort. I think you know this about me. I am straight biblical. Like, I believe every single word of the Bible, and I want to follow every single word of the Bible. I think everything in the Bible is truth. And I think you think a little bit outside of that box, which is great. Like, I think that'll give us some good conversations. But I do believe in a lot of science. I believe that he created our bodies. Like, you can see all the neuroscience and all the neurobiology and how everything ties together. And like, in every single way, I could think of like millions of ways that I could illustrate this. But I love how that works. How he has created us and created science, the science behind our bodies and our brains. And like, so that's a real thing that I do believe. I don't know the answers. Like, it's sometimes hard for me as a follower to like think outside of the box. Like, could this be true? Could this be true? Am I wrong for, thinking about this or thinking about this? But it's really interesting.
I totally agree. And you're right. I'm someone that looks at the Bible and biblical teachings as a combination of some historical truth and some metaphorical stuff that we don't really understand, that's been made into a story in order to help us understand it.
Mhm.
The way that the human brain learns best is through stories and storytelling. And so I think that some of the stuff in there is definitely historically true, and is stuff that is direct witness testimony of things that happened. I do believe that, but I think there's other elements of it which are metaphorical. An easy example to bring up is the book of Genesis. So I do think that the book of Genesis is predominantly metaphorical. It's talking about real things that happen, the emergence of mankind and the development of the world and everything else. But I think it's metaphorical as opposed to being absolutely literal. In that, so for example, the 6 days of creating the world, each one of those days could have been 1,000,000 years. To God, they're a day. But to us, they'd be 1,000,000 years worth of time that these things took to create. That's just a quick example.
Absolutely, I agree with you there.
Yeah,
I agree with you there.
Yeah, and that's kind of my viewpoint on it, and I think that my take is a combination of utilizing that science that is clearly true, and the more you read about scientists who have dug deep into these things, the more so many of them set out to prove that science is the truth and end up believing in God, because they end up going through it and discovering the patterns that go through everything.
Sure, because God is undeniable.
Yeah. And then they get to the point where they're like, well, there can't be any other explanation except for an intelligent creator that made all of this. And then when they start to understand the scripture side of it, they put the two together, and it makes an awful lot of sense. That's my viewpoint on it, as best explained as I can in a short space of time.
I definitely respect that. And I think there's going to be a lot to talk about with all kinds of things. And I think our very similar perspectives but they are different a little bit. Yeah. I think this will be really good, and hopefully people can think outside of the box as well and learn along with us.
I think so. And so you wanted to talk about some particular things that we want to touch on, particularly with regard to truth in general, because I think we both agree that one of the biggest problems in society today is that there are so many things that are clearly untrue that people are almost being forced to believe.
Yes. And at the bottom, I think at the base of that is the fact that truth has become something that used to be set, and now it's something that's so ambiguous, and it can just be whatever you want it to be in the mood you're in the moment you're in. And you can change your truth from one second to the other based on how you feel or based on what you might believe in any given second. And it's really, really annoying. It's honestly so annoying.
It is annoying.
So there are, of course, some pretty significant truths that have been very distorted into what we now call truth, because we can do whatever we want. Of course, like one of the biggest ones is that gender is whatever you want it to be, including
malleable or changeable, or a social construct or whatever it happens to be. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Or even like an animal. You can become an animal now too. So
yes. Exactly. Yeah. You can kind of just choose whatever identity you feel like on that particular day.
Yeah, I think it's absurd. As I said, I'm straight to the bone biblical, and God created men and he created women, and there is a reason for that. And men are the providers and the protectors in many, many different ways, not just financially like people think. I work with men, and a lot of men always ask me like, well, I am a provider. Well, are you really a provider? Because there are a lot of things you're supposed to provide besides finances. But anyway, that's another story.
That's something we can certainly get into at some point.
But like men are servant leaders, right? Men are givers. Women are also givers, but they are to receive what the man is giving, and in a healthy relationship, submit to the man who has submitted to God. So that's like the ultimate idea. And even anatomically, men are givers and women are receivers. Like, it is just made that way. And for people to distort that is a huge problem. And it has torn down families. Like, a traditional family is the minority of families at this point. That takes me into like the whole like kids don't need dads thing. Kids 100%,
another lie,
1,000%, like infinity percent need fathers. There are things that mothers can do that are great, but there are some things that mothers can't do, and that is father their children. We can try. I mean, I'm a single mom. I try very hard to do this, but there are things that I just can't do. The epidemic of fatherlessness, which, you know, I know you talk a lot about, it's a real problem. There are so many reasons that kids need dads. I mean, even like kids without dads, there's more of a chance of academic failure, sexual promiscuity, drug, alcohol use. Like all of these things are more prominent if you don't have a dad.
Something like 74% more likely to end up in prison, things like that. There's it's a huge problem, and yeah, you're right. It's based upon the same kind of lies, and I've gone past the point now where I'm able to look at it as benevolent. I no longer see that. I see it as a intentional act of evil to distort truth, because that's the point. If you again boil it back to and let's keep using the same word, Lucifer's rebellion in heaven. If you boil it back to then, the lie that he told to get others to follow him is that God loved man more than them.
Yeah.
And so he began by distorting truth. And I think that's where it all comes back to.
That's how the devil and evil work, though, is they like, people think that that Satan is just sitting around ready to like pounce on you all of a sudden and attack you, but he works in very, very progressive, slow ways that just kind of like they're things that you barely notice until they're too big to take control of.
Yes.
It's in the tiny distractions. It's in the little doubts that are put in your mind. It's in the little, you know, conversations you might have with people that get you to start like believing in things that you don't actually believe in. And he plays on your specific, you know, vices and downfalls, like your specific ones. It's he knows us very well, but I do believe that you can prevent him from entering into your mind.
I think so. I think what I would add to that is that we've all probably had thoughts that come into our head that somehow we know aren't our own. And it's really about whether we act upon them or not. That shifts us one way or the other. And everybody is guilty. Everybody has acted on things they probably shouldn't have acted on. Everyone has done bad things that they probably shouldn't have done, and and everybody has done things that they probably can't explain. They probably would look back and go, I don't know why I did that. And I think that's because ultimately it wasn't them that decided to do it.
Right. I agree with you. We're all broken people. We're all sinners, and we always will be. I think like our life on earth is a constant battle between flesh, which is evil, and God. Like choosing God. How do I stay consistent to God's truth and not fall to the hedonistic whims of the earth? It's a real struggle. I mean, that's why we will always be sinners.
Yes, exactly. And I think I think this is where I find the connect that I try to make, especially as somebody who didn't grow up religious and wasn't raised religious, and have now I'm now in a space where I feel a lot closer to God and a lot closer to these things because I've started focusing on it more. But I think for me, the thing that has got into my head is that I have always struggled with the idea of it being called sin, and everything you do that's bad is evil, and you're a bad person for doing it, or whatever it happens to be. That's where I've always had that as a natural contrary person. If I'm a natural anti-authoritarian, I'm naturally contrary, I'm naturally the against the overview of authority. And so whenever I was given the idea that where it starts is sin and then you're trying to repent, I always push back against that.
Okay.
I always felt that was a rubbing against the grain for me. And I think a lot of people who are not religious or don't like the idea of religion have a similar kind of feel. They don't like the idea that the start point, and this is more on more of the Catholic kind of end of things than necessarily the more non-denominational stuff. But the fact that it kind of starts at an original sin, I think a lot of people find difficult to get their heads around. And so the way that I've tried to get around that is that it's much more about ensuring. Think of it like a diet. Think of it like a diet. You can eat a certain diet. That doesn't mean that you can't have a piece of cake every now and then. It's and what I mean is, I don't mean you can sin sometimes just because. What I mean is that it's so long as you're keeping the majority of what you do and moving yourself towards always spending as much time doing the right thing as you can, you will naturally move yourself in that right direction.
I do agree with you. I do agree with you. As you know, I'm going to be a little bit more strict when it comes to that. I think now going back to your first point that you made, I don't believe anybody is evil. I don't believe that people are evil. I believe that they allow evil into their lives. Evil as like a construct. It's not like a person. I believe everybody can be good. I believe in redemption for everybody, no matter what they've done. I believe everybody can be saved. So I'll say that. As far as sin, I think Jesus, God laid out some rules. Jesus then came to fulfill them and give the deeper meaning to them. And yes, we'll always be sinners, and we'll always mess up, and we'll always fail, and we'll always make bad choices. But the patterns of sin can be, I think this is where repentance comes in, like the patterns of sin that are repeated. I think those need to be like, go back to like Mary Magdalene. She was a prostitute. Her pattern of sin was transformed and she repented. Like she did not go back to that sin.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. Like,
I agree.
Are we going to get mad one day and have road rage and be like, screw you, like in different words, like worse words? Yes.
Which we've all said.
Like that is considered a sin, right? Because you're being mean to somebody. But so those little things, I think those things are natural. But I think the patterns of sin that that you need to change and repent for, or even like a bit like, or even take like if someone murdered somebody, that's just like, I know that all sins are equal, but there are things, I don't know. There are things that you probably go back to, like the road rage incidents.
Yes.
There are things that you should never go back to. The little road rage incidents equal as much as the murder in God's eyes. However, like, I don't know how to rectify that,
I know what you mean. I've always had a problem with the phrase that you just said there, and I'm not taking issue with what you said, but it's the problem with the thing in the Bible of all sins are sin, all sins are equal. I've always had an issue with that because I think of it in the same terms as like almost like lying. because sometimes you have to tell a little white lie to your child
Yeah.
to make sure that you're a good parent to them. Oh, we've run out of sweets,
Yeah.
or something like that, so that they're, so they're not after more of them,
Yeah.
things like
Yes,
that,
I
little
agree.
things like that. Whereas that's very different to, pretending you've got terminal cancer so you get people to give you money.
Yeah.
I think those two things are very completely opposed. And I would say that, being in your car and getting angry with somebody who's driving badly and you swear at them or whatever in your car, that's fine. It's yes, you probably shouldn't, but that's nothing, nowhere near equating, molesting a child or murdering someone. I don't see those things as being equal.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not going to attempt to put words in God's mouth and explain that, but it's really hard to think about. But I think the idea behind the sin and the repentance, though, ultimately is like the repentance. Even when I was a little kid, I just thought repentance meant like, okay, you say you're sorry and then you move on. But you have to change. You have to transform. It requires transformation.
Exactly. You actually have to do it with action, not just word.
Right. And so the Christian thought, I think, would be that, if you take a sin and it's a sin and you've disappointed God, like the idea would be to be accountable and take ownership and then actually like never look back to that sin. And I think you can do that with most things. And I think as I've gotten deeper into my spiritual life, I notice myself sinning less. And I purposefully try not to sin. Do I still sin? Sure.
Yeah.
But I sin less. And maybe the idea is to keep going through that transformation and that intentional way of life. And you just get better and better. I don't know.
I agree. I agree with you. I think the, kind of circling back to where we were to start out here is that looking at that corruption of truth. It's interesting that it's effectively been weaponized empathy that has actually driven that distortion of truth. Because that's the one area where I feel it feels very difficult for me to square that circle, because it's almost like I can't remember who said it. Might have been, I can't remember who said the quote, but the quote is basically, evil preaches tolerance until it is in control, and then it removes everything.
Yeah. Evil makes it seem like it's all okay, like your sin is okay, like, oh, you're fine, like this feels good, this is the right way. Follow your heart. That's like the worst piece of advice you could ever give anybody. Follow your heart. Follow your heart has led people to, drown their careers in their marriages, like probably commit suicide, like follow your heart's terrible advice.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the one that I always say, which is very similar, is that be your true self. Be truly who you are.
Yeah.
And I think, what if truly who you are is a serial killer? You probably shouldn't do that. You should probably not go and do the thing that you're tempted to do or you're being driven towards doing. Now, sometimes the thing that you're driven towards doing and the thing that you're drawn towards doing is good.
Yeah.
And therefore, do more of that. But that brings us back to the same point that we were talking about at the beginning of what's that objective moral truth? Because that's really what it all boils down to, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. And be your true self. Okay, you could take that as good advice. Now, but what is your true self? Your true self is what you were created to be. How God created you specifically and your unique purpose and what you are supposed to provide to the world. That is being your true self and staying aligned to you and but in him. And so if you follow that path, you can't go wrong. But it requires surrender and obedience, which people don't want to do.
Yes, and I think again, it's because the language has been weaponized and corrupted. Because you listen to any feminist talking point, and if you ever
That's another thing I want to talk about is feminism.
Exactly. If you ever say the words submit, surrender, follow, they immediately are triggered by that word as, oh, this is an oppression of me and everything that I want to do, and so on and so on. I can't be my own selfish self if I have to submit and surrender and follow and so on. So
yeah,
that's
I love to say those words.
Yeah.
I love to say those words just to trigger people. Is that terrible?
No, nothing wrong with that. I do it all the time.
There's this wonderful girl that everybody here should follow. Her name is Haley Lawrence. She talks about this stuff all the time. Like, she's super, super Christian, beautiful single mom, but she is very anti feminism, and it's super refreshing. And she speaks biblical truth, like in this like very punchy, like in your face way. It's amazing. But yeah, but feminism, the lie of feminism, is something that I definitely want to talk about on our show. There's a lot to get in there for sure.
Like, there is. And I think it's interesting that that the feminism thing, because you can track societal decay in the West back to the beginning of feminism.
Yes.
Back to the suffragette movement. That was kind of where it began. Now, there'd been some kind of preambles to it, Communist Manifesto, things like that had started moving things in that direction. But there's an acceleration when feminism becomes a big thing. Yeah. When that starts to pick up and there starts to be that push and so on. And there are interests that stepped into that made it worse. So at the time of the suffragette movement in the sort of it was like the 19 teens kind of, it was when it was sort of started out. A very substantial proportion of women did not want the vote and actively voted against it and actively pushed against wanting against being involved in that, because at the time there was all kinds of advantages that women had by not doing that. One of which being that women couldn't incur debt.
Yeah.
It was any debt that they incurred was incurred by their husband. They could still own property, they could still make money, they could still work. There was nothing stopping them doing any of that stuff, which feminism will lie to you and tell you that, oh no, women were all oppressed until this happened. Yeah. That wasn't the case. The other thing that's interesting is that if you trace it backwards, no left-wing party would have ever won an election in any Western country if women didn't vote.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe that. I believe that for sure.
And if you because if you look at the left as a political ideology, it is weaponized empathy.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's built around. It is built around the weaponization of empathy. Women are generally very more empathetic and tend to be a lot more emotionally led in terms of what they care about and what they focus their attentions on and so on, whereas men tend to be a bit more logical and a lot more difficult to corrupt. Now, the other elements that came in there were work and taxes and things like that. One of the big pushes behind it was, look, if you double the workforce, you double the tax burden. If you can get every single woman to start doing a job, then you can tax all the women as well, and you end up with more money as the government. So there was powerful entities behind pushing that as well.
Yeah.
So there was a whole load of things, and I'm not desperately conspiratorial, but if you look at it in hindsight, it looks like a conspiracy.
Right.
It looks like if we do this, we break up this, and this. We break up the family. We break up this. We prevent this. We slow this down. We make this thing go faster. And before we know it, we've got a society of worker drones who will just go and do what we tell them to do.
And isn't it funny now, the fact that you listed all those things, isn't it funny that when you do ask AI, like, how can we destroy society,
It
it tells you
explains
the
that.
exact same things you
Yeah,
just said.
exactly. It tells you to do that. That's pretty much what it is. Yeah, it's the whole if you were going to destroy society, what would you do? And
Yeah.
it basically lists out all the things that have been being done for about the last century.
Yeah.
And have accelerated in recent times.
It's super
So
scary.
yeah, it is scary.
Like, if you go back and like think about like, because feminism, the thought of and this is why like feminism and Marxist type ideas are so attractive to the younger generations, and why colleges win when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
To create such like a leftist society, I think.
Yeah.
Those, because like it does appeal to the empathy, like, oh, equality, and we don't believe in meritocracy, and like everybody should have the exact same deal, and this and this and this, but like it is appealing if you put a certain spin on it. It's appealing. Like, think and go back to the beginnings of feminism. Okay, it would be great if women could have this and this and this that they don't currently have. Like, it sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
But isn't it crazy that it just like and if you think about evil, like it's the evil, and it slowly destroyed everything.
Yeah. And evil always looks to corrupt the youth first, because they're the easiest to corrupt, and that's it always reminds me of the Churchill quote, which is if you're not a socialist by the time you're 18, you've got no heart, and if you're not a conservative by the time you're 35, you've got no brain.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Which is quite interesting. I always find that one an interesting quote, because it is very accurate. Because it's people start off with their empathetic approach, and that's that oh, I want to help people, I want to it's love, and it's good to look after people, but what that becomes is that that overbearing kind of side of it, and the suicidal empathy that comes out of that, that destroys everything. But then what happens is, when people get to a certain age, especially when they start having children, running careers, buying assets, and building up a life for themselves, they suddenly start going, well, hold on, none of this actually really works.
It makes zero sense.
Yeah, none of this actually makes any sense. And so that's why there's a push to create permanent dependency. Because if you keep people permanently dependent, they never hit that realization point. So I think that's interesting. But I think one of the things that's quite interesting around that is, Jordan Peterson talks about this as well, but it kind of connects in all together with the collapse of the nuclear family, the kind of raising of women into a more prominent role in sort of guiding where society goes, and what's happening now, and that is that have you heard of the Jungian archetype of the devouring mother?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the theories is that what happens is, when you get a lot of women who are effectively childless, or not being mothers, and coming out of the family environment and not mothering, they instead become societal mothers. They want to mother the entirety of the world.
Yep.
And it's the same thing as you were talking about. There's a reason there's fathers. There's a reason there are fathers in the home, because you boil it down to the home. The mother's job is, and I can't remember where I've heard this one, but it's like the mother is permanently occupied with how their child is doing and feeling now.
Yes.
It's permanently occupied with their child's present situation.
Yeah, nurturing them in the present situation.
Ruthlessly dedicated to their child's needs now.
Yes.
The father is ruthlessly dedicated to the person their child could become.
Yes, absolutely.
And so what happens is that those two things balance. The mother looks after how the child's feeling now, and the father focuses on how they get the child to be the person they want them to be. Yeah. Whereas if you take the father out of that situation, what happens? You end up with a permanent state of what you want now matters.
it's really, and I can think about myself, like, because I've been a single mom raising at least my girls. Like, my son has a great dad, but with my girls specifically, I was the devouring mother for most of their life. Like, when I went through my personal transformation, that's when I changed. So 6 years ago, but up until 6 years ago, I was that person. I was only concentrated on the now. I coddled, I overspoiled, I did all of the wrong things. Now I've kind of shifted into that thing now. And so I've kind of shifted into being very concerned about their future and guiding them and making them more principled people, which again, I can't do it all myself, but I am, but I'm trying, but
that is all you can do.
But it's fathers are so important. Do you know that back when they were recruiting people to like be Nazis, they specifically targeted family, like boys who didn't have dads.
Yeah, it's the same thing. If you look at the modern day thing now, the modern left, and no matter what people want to tell you, the Nazis were not far right; they were far left. They were just a different offshoot. Nazi is short for National Socialist. Yes. They were a far left party with a slightly different lean. But if you look at it these days, what do they target? They target children as young as possible. And what are they actually really doing? They're trying to sterilize them. They're trying to corrupt their brains. They're trying to shift them into different ways of living. They're trying to completely remove them from any kind of future that a young boy would have.
It's pretty alarming. It's pretty alarming.
It is, and I can't remember who. I think it. Do you know who Milo Yiannopoulos is?
Say his name again.
Milo Yiannopoulos, his name is.
I guess not.
No, so he was one of the very first kind of internet kind of like troll kind of people. He was a very, very hardline right-wing commentator back in the sort of 2008-ish time was when he sort of emerged. And he was he worked for Breitbart News, I think it was that he worked for, but he was a very big influencer. He was one of the first people to go to colleges and tell them all how bad everything that they were doing was, and everything.
He was like the first Charlie Kirk.
He was kind of that first person, but he was far more controversial and far more far meaner than Charlie Kirk ever was. He was he took a certain amount of pleasure in making people feel stupid. He was definitely that kind of person. One of the things about him was that he was gay, and he used to talk about the fact that I'm gay, but that doesn't mean I have to be left wing, and so on. He used to talk about that quite a lot. And after Charlie Kirk's assassination, he's kind of re-emerged. And now that he's reemerged, he was on a couple of podcasts recently. He was on Tucker Carlson's recently. He was on Tim Pool's one recently, and so on. He's been on a few of them recently. He now is Christian and celibate and is no longer gay.
I believe that 100%.
And that's
amazing.
And he was talking about this and talking about how it was it was an element of evil that drew him into that, and it was lies and things like that drew him in. But one of the things he was specifically talking about was the reason the left target children is because he said so much of that ideology is sterile in real terms, and so they can't produce their own children, so they have to therefore target the children of others. Gosh. Because otherwise they can't continue to procreate that idea.
That's fascinating to think about. I want to go see that Tucker Carlson. I love
the Tucker Carlson one's very good. I would recommend that one. He's very honest. He's very open on it and so on. But he's he does say some things that sometimes you're like, okay, maybe that's a bit too far. But he's if you listen to the kind of experience and so on that he's had, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I definitely want to listen to that. Lanston says, when the love, talking about that devouring mother, I think that we are both talking about. He says, when the love becomes possession, growth becomes danger, and you protect them from becoming themselves. That's so true. That's it.
Yeah, that sums it up exceptionally well, because that is almost the way that it's again, not trying to sound too too controversial here, but it tends to be a feminine trait that they've got a more possessive feeling around particular things than men tend to. It's one of those things that I always notice. My mum used to do it, and I notice sometimes my wife does it as well. She'll say things like, "Oh, my house," or "my bedroom," "my car," things like that. And whenever I'm talking about them, I'll say, "Our house," "our bedroom."
Oh,
our
yeah.
car. It's just a different kind of way of language. It tends to be more women that tend to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's because women have got a more safety focused outlook on life. It's about trying to keep everything safe and secure and looked after and so on. So this is mine to look after. I think that's kind of how women's psychology works a bit more.
It's so true. I say that too. I do that. I do that too.
Exactly. It's I've noticed it particularly that it tends to be women who tend to do that, and men tend to say our thing, our time, or whatever happens to be. They tend to use a collective noun for it or adjective for it more. And I think that's just a psychological difference between the two.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There are a lot of psychological differences between men and women that I of course want to talk about. We have to wrap up, but so this first hour went by really fast.
It did.
I love, what we're doing here. There are lots of things that, we're going to be talking about, all these topics we'll get further into, like feminism and the gender situation, probably in very potentially controversial ways.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
The fatherlessness thing too, but essentially that like we're trying to uncover the truth and where we are failing and how we can get back to living in the truth, which I've discussed what that is in my mind. You've discussed what that is in your mind, and kind of go from there.
I agree. And I think that, it would be a good exercise for us to do probably in the next one. It would be to analyze or talk about ways in which both of us discern what is truthful and what isn't.
That's good. Yes.
I think that would be a good thing to take into the next steps.
That's an excellent idea.
Excellent.
So for all who joined us, thank you. I see Frankie there too. Thanks for being here. Chris also, and of course, Lanston, thanks for those comments. I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to furthering our reach and our missions. We have very independent individual visions, but this kind of brings them together, and I love that. I love that a lot. So
it does.
We will be back next. What?
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. We'll be back next Thursday at noon Central, and we hope to see you there. Do you have any closing words?
I don't think so. No, I'm really pleased with how this has gone. It's as you say, it flew by fast because the conversation always flows quite easy when we're both talking about things we're passionate about, and we're talking from the heart rather than trying to come up with talking points that we don't really necessarily believe in or are trying to just wedge in for no particular purpose. By doing it this way, we just we're naturally going to get ourselves towards the truth.
Yes. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well,
I'll let you close it out.
We will look forward to seeing you guys here again next week. And we'd love to make this more interactive too. If you have some topics that you'd like to discuss that people just don't like to talk about, we would love to talk about them. So drop those in the comments, and we'll definitely start addressing those too. And we will see you guys next week.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
God bless.